Well, every single day we are impacted by the work of our Michigan legislature, our governor, and those outside of the state of Michigan that have an impact on the Great Lakes state in politics. And joining us, as always, to talk about what is the latest going on in politics here in Michigan and beyond is Dave Dulio, professor of political science at Oakland University, where he also serves as the director for their Center for Civic Engagement. Dave, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, Tyler, good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you as well. And it's always an interesting time in our politics, but all eyes seem to be on 2024, and every single topic, it ultimately dates back to, well, how is that going to ultimately impact us in 2024? But let's take a step back, because Oakland County is a really interesting area of the state of Michigan politically. It's historically been a very red area, very Republican area of Michigan, but in the last several elections, it's been taking a shift to the blue, and it's been pretty impactful across the state as we've gone from having a very conservative executive in L. Brooks Patterson for a number of years to now a Democrat in Dave Coulter and Democratic leadership in the county commission and of course in the state house, Senate, and in the governor's race. So just how much of an impact is Oakland County really going to have in Michigan in 2024 as it's had in the past couple elections?
Well, Oakland County is poised to be a critical part of elections and policy making in Michigan in 2024 and beyond. I mean, it's a and I say that for a number of reasons. One, it's a vote-rich area of the state. It is also an area where there are a number of persuadable voters. I think Oakland County, as you've said, is seen a bit of a transition in its transformation from a very reliable Republican county to one that is now Democratic, right? In terms of elected officials, all the countywides are Democratic except for the sheriff. But I think that hides some competitiveness, right? I think it would be unwise for Democrats to assume that it's a dark blue, very progressive county now. I don't think that's true. We've seen Oakland County shift over the last 20 years or so. Demographically, it is much more diverse in all sorts of ways than it used to be, and that certainly brings more Democratic votes. But there are still a lot of Republicans here. There are, for example, there are many folks in Oakland County who, in 2016, voted for Donald Trump. They thought they would give it a try. They thought they would see what he brought to the table. And then in 2018, 2020, and in 2022, Trump and other Republicans lost those voters, right? However, in 2020, when John James ran and was on the ticket with Trump, John James, of course, Republican Senate candidate at the time, running against Gary Peters, right? He got more votes in Oakland County than Donald Trump did, raw votes. So that tells me that there are folks in Oakland County who are willing to listen to a Republican message and are receptive to a Republican message. If the right messenger is there, and if they have the right policy proposals and right platform on which they're running. So Oakland County remains competitive. It wasn't in 2022 in the governor's race. Gretchen Whitmer carried Oakland County by 145,000 votes. And back to your sort of original question, Republicans can't be competitive statewide if they lose Oakland County by 145,000 votes. So Republicans are going to they have some work to do, but it's not like it is a mountain that is, where the summit can't be reached.
And that's what makes this such an interesting case study, is because we know Wayne County is historically a very blue county, as the most populous county in the state, with, of course, the city of Detroit being in Wayne County proper. And then Oakland County was always kind of that counterpoint for the Republicans, where if you could pick up Oakland County and you could pick up some of the more moderately sized counties throughout the state, you're going to be at least competitive on the state level. So looking into that case study, from what you've been able to look at in the last several elections, from your discussions with students on these sorts of topics, where did that transition really begin from this being so staunchly Republican to being more of a purple area of Michigan?
Yeah, I think it really does start with the demographic shift that we've seen over the last 20 years or so, right? From the southern tier of Oakland County has become more democratic, and I think that that's really because of the diversity that has come into the county from other parts of the region, right? You look at places like Royal Oak and Ferndale and Oak Park, right? Those are places where that shift is at its greatest. But again, you go up to the northern part of Oakland County, and it's still pretty similar to what it was 20 years ago. Maybe a little bit of shift, but certainly much less than we've seen in other regions of the county. And I would just add too, right? You're right to mention Wayne County as sort of a counter to the traditional Oakland County landscape. But what's also really fascinating is that Macomb County has seen a similar shift, but in the opposite direction of Oakland County, right? Macomb County used to be reliably Democratic, and it's not now anymore. All the countywide offices in Macomb County are held by Republicans, ironically, except the sheriff, right? Which is just the mirror image of what it is here in Oakland County. So Southeast Michigan, fascinating area politically in terms of how things have shifted. The political cultures of, frankly, those three areas, Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne, vastly different, right? So and back to another point too for folks is that if you take Oakland, Macomb, Wayne, and Washtenaw counties, you have almost 50% of the statewide vote that gets cast in a statewide election. So this is Southeast Michigan is the population center. That means votes. That means a large number of members from the in the state house and state senate, right? Where this is a concentration of a number of members, and of course, when those bodies get involved, it's Oakland County with its large number of representatives having a really big and important effect on statewide policymaking.
And that's what makes this so interesting to be looking at historically and to be analyzing right now is because, as you said, nearly 50% of the state among these several counties here in southeastern Michigan, with the Electoral College for Michigan being all or nothing with those statewide votes, governor, state secretary of state, attorney general, and so on being all or nothing from the popular vote. That, of course, has a major impact, these four counties, and informs so much of what else goes on across Michigan in our politics. Dave, continuing on, we've had a number of major weather incidents, particularly in southeastern Michigan, but really across the state of late. Thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in both of these instances being knocked out of power. And it's once again put these utilities, particularly DTE Energy, under a microscope. There was a really interesting article earlier on this week from Bridge, Michigan. Stella, you did a great job of analyzing another key topic in politics, not just in the state of Michigan, but countrywide for a number of years. The money that is in politics, by her research, 70% of Michigan's lawmakers have had PAC donations from utilities like DTE and Consumers Energy, and so as really these last few decades have gone on, and we've seen legislation at the federal level impact campaign finance, how has that opened the door to more of these questions of conflict of interest arising with individual lawmakers and lawmakers in general, given that so much of what they're doing to check some of these companies that are in powerful positions like utilities, while they're also providing so much to these campaigns. And it is what it is in politics. These politicians are working as much for our communities as they are to get reelected.
Well, I'm not sure there's anything new here, right? I mean, this is a story that's been around for decades and decades. It's where a great deal of hand-wringing and gnashing of teeth happens in terms of a lot of Americans look at at the system of campaign finance and the ability of different entities to make contributions to candidates for office, as they look at it as corrupt, right? But I would say this, right? Let's think about the congressional level, and maybe that's not the most appropriate one, but let's use that as an example. So political action committees, PACs, can provide a direct contribution to a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, $5,000. That's it. That's what they can give. And there are other ways that they can get involved, but in terms of writing a check and saying, here, we hope you win your election, it's $5,000. That is a drop in the bucket compared to what a successful candidate for the House of Representatives needs to raise, which these days is at least $1 million, right? So that is just a minuscule amount that a PAC can contribute. The other thing I would say is that, when it comes to and I'm certainly not going to make excuses for DTE and their let's just say slow response to get everybody back with power over the last couple of weeks and the couple of storms. But it's not like elected officials look at DTE and say, hey, look, we're going to take your PAC money, and we hope that you slowly respond to power outages, right? That's not how that goes. I mean, now we could talk about different maybe regulatory components of this, but I think this is a little different than somebody who might look at say an environmental question or a gun control question and wonder about where allegiances lie. I find it hard to believe that elected officials at the national or statewide level here in Michigan would want to see slow responses. And I think you've seen their reaction to that over the last couple of weeks is, hey, look, we got to figure out what the heck is happening here and why it takes so long.
Yeah, even Attorney General Dana Nessel this week saying that her office is also looking into what is going on with these utilities, why the response has been so slow. And then on top of that, especially because they are looking to raise their rates by 13.9%. and again, it always seems to be right around the times when these events happen that comes back out again, and they look for changing their rates.
Well, and that's another thing, right? That's just a kicking somebody when they're down. Right. I mean, and maybe that's something that the state government and heck, even the federal government should look at in terms of rate increases and what's appropriate and what's not. I know that there's a board that oversees that and it's got to get approval. But if there was good service all around, maybe folks would be more able to stomach a 13% rate increase, but not when we see hundreds of thousands of people without power. And that's DTE can't do anything about an ice storm or a snowstorm, but when you get estimates of it's going to be 6 days until you get your power back, you sort of go, what the heck am I paying this rate increase for?
Yeah, Michigan Public Service Commission would have to approve that rate hike before it could be official. 13.9% is what DTE is currently seeking in their rate hikes for all of their customers. We're joined by Dave Dulio on today's edition of the Megacast. He's also the director for the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Got a big office hours coming up actually tomorrow which features the president of Oakland University, Dr. Hirsch-Pescovitz. Tell us about that, as this is really covering an important topic that we've seen, unfortunately, even recently, come to blows here in Michigan, and that's anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it's an office hours session that, as you know, Tyler, we try to take on important topics and timely topics. And unfortunately, the issue of rising anti-Semitism is in the news again. We've seen this over the last couple years that incidents and examples of anti-Semitic threats and behavior has been on the rise. And just last week, right here in Michigan, where a guy used Twitter to make threats against anybody in the Michigan government who is of the Jewish faith. So What we're going to do is get two folks who know a lot about this, and I should also say too, it's not just in the general public. Incidents of anti-Semitism have risen dramatically on college campuses. So we're going to bring together two folks who know a lot about this. President Pescovitz from the perspective of a university president and where higher ed fits into confronting anti-Semitism. We've also got a professor of history, Dr. Derek Hastings, who studies Nazi Germany, the Holocaust. He's got a wealth of information and knowledge about this issue to share. And we're going to talk about, why we've seen the rise, how anti-Semitism has changed over time, what we might be able to do about it moving forward, how we can combat it. And it's going to be a fascinating discussion from 12 to 1 tomorrow. It's so folks can watch the Megacast and then tune in a little bit later and check us out. You can come in person if you want to the Oakland Center on OU's campus, or join virtually via Zoom. All the information is at a link at the bottom of our webpage at oakland.edu/CCE.
Yep, as he said, oakland.edu/CCE. You can also find a flyer on their Facebook page, facebook.com/OUCCE. Dave, thanks as always for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.